Welcome to the podcast where we take a deep dive into the stories behind construction business leaders. We will share how they got started, how they found success, and the lessons learned along the way. I'm your host, Eric Fortenberry. Welcome to Builder Stories. Welcome, everyone. I am here with Ben Schneider from Peak Sodding based in North Carolina. I'm excited to have you on the show today, Ben.
Hey, man, how are you doing today?
Doing great. I still remember when we first met, I don't know, maybe almost 2 years ago. I think it was at the Tom Reber's Mile High Profit Summit. And I remember you got up on stage and dude, you got an incredible story. And, I'm so excited to have you on today to share that. So, why don't you give a little bit of background about who you are and what you guys do?
Yeah, I appreciate that. And thanks for having me on. It's a super, an awesome privilege just to be invited to be a part of the podcast. My name is Ben Schneider. I own a small landscape, we'll call it a landscape company out of North Carolina. We're kind of based right in the Raleigh area. And I started my company in early 2019. Essentially, I had spent a fair amount of time leading up to that out of high school. I had been doing miscellaneous jobs, mostly in the sales-oriented roles within the landscaping/lawn care industry. So was able to build up a fair amount of knowledge about lawn care and landscaping within that field. And I definitely had a relatively strong entrepreneurial itch. And that's how I describe it, as just a very large desire to be able to be a business owner, to have that manifest itself in whatever way it could. And because of my prior experience, landscaping was the most sensible way to go. And so we basically built the company from the ground up from there. I decided very early on that I was going to be much more of a niche company. So we decided to really focus in on this singular service of sod installation, because there's not a whole lot of people that offer it exclusively. It's normally just kind of like a passing thought as people are wanting to get a lawn planted. But we live in North Carolina is a relatively unique climate. So creates opportunity for us to really be able to offer a really cool and somewhat of a custom tailored type service that just not a lot of other companies offer. So it was a really cool, unique experience. And I loved just kind of how to go about it and build it from there is what got us to here.
Man, that's awesome. So right out of high school, is that what you said?
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah,
So
I didn't go to college or anything like that. I was much more of a baptism by fire type of guy. I hated school, to be candid. And as a result, I just kind of dove right into a world that suited me better.
Man, that's awesome. So how old were you when you started this?
So 2019, I would have been 21.
It's incredible, man. So what do you think, what drove you to want to be an entrepreneur? Like, how did you find out about entrepreneurship and what made you want to own your own business?
So initially it was, I always kind of had, I mean, I was just in high school, I would follow certain influencers and stuff of that nature, like the Gary V's of those types. And I read 4 Hour Work Week. And I think initially I was very entrapped with this idea of like, I could build a lifestyle for myself of financial freedom where I could just have a life of ease for me and my family. And so that was kind of the core of the desire to be an entrepreneur. I read Rich Dad Poor Dad, and that really left a big dent on my mentality and my worldview as far as how I saw jobs and careers and future and all that sort of stuff. So I would say that was the core of it. It's definitely, if you were to ask me the same question of like, why are you an entrepreneur now? I think the answer would be substantially different. But that was definitely the driving factor at the time. As a young guy, I was just ambitious. I wanted to make a lot of money, and I thought I could really build a cool lifestyle of ease and wealth around that, essentially.
Yeah. So, and this is, I think you had a daughter, right? Maybe after you started this business at some point.
I did, yeah. So we have our daughter Summer. She is 16 months old now.
All right. Well, congrats on that as well. So what do you think's been the hardest thing about starting this business from the ground up?
So there were a few things for me that were a little bit unique because I was 21 at the time. I barely even knew who I was. I probably didn't know who I was at all at the time. Like I alluded to earlier, I had a lot of I would almost call them sometimes misguided ambitions around what building a business would look like and what it ultimately would lead to, and a lot of things along that line. So some of the challenges initially were just like really being able to find out what I actually wanted within a business. I was deep into a world where comparison was king. I always was comparing myself to other business owners. Like there would be other young entrepreneurs. Like I remember there would be this 16-year-old entrepreneur that has a multi-million-dollar company. And I'm like, as someone who's 21, even at that point, I was still at a very young point. I still am at a very young point in my life, but I saw that as something like I was already behind, essentially. So in that same line of thinking, it created a lot of motivations and ambitions and values that bled their way throughout my business and the way that I managed my business that led to basically me running things not in a business approach that I wanted to. So I managed my finances really poorly. A lot of it again was just about like trying to make it. I was always thinking that I was at the point where I could take more money than I probably should have. I always
Sure.
felt that I could spend more money than I actually had. And a lot of young foolish mistakes I would describe them as, but definitely valuable learning lessons along the way too. I started off the company, our labor force was employees, so we have now since shifted into a subcontractor model for our installation crews. But for me at that point to have labor crews, that was a whole different animal of I was having to balance some degrees of my own ego with wanting to be a leader and wanting to be a better leader, but also wanting to please the people that were working for me and make sure I was creating an environment that they wanted to be a part of. And it seemed like, especially being as young as I was, allowing my ego to get in the way was very quickly the thing that devastated a lot of my early years in business. And I won't say derailed it entirely because I'm still here, but I would definitely say threw a wrench in a lot of what could have been some definitely more fruitful years as a result.
Sure. I mean, I was a little bit older. I was 23 when I started my first company, but I think the thing that really stuck out, kind of and why like I just immediately like resonated with you is like just like seeing how young and hungry you were, to climb that ladder and to figure out the answers. And I'd say the thing that you did even better than me is that you found this network of similar people who are running businesses, putting yourself and surrounding yourself with with people who have been there and have done that. I mean, man, like if I would have had that network and so many awesome people like mentors and people to help guide me like at your age, I mean, man, like it's I think that's incredibly smart of you to surround yourself with such talented people. And at the end of the day, like I think we both can attest to like that feeling of like you got your back up against the wall and like the only thing you can do is fight, and you just got to keep fighting, and no matter what, like you don't have a choice. There's only one way to go. And that's what I've seen, seen through you, is that you're very much going to take whatever comes your way and figure out how to overcome it and grow. And I'm curious to learn a little bit more about what it was like having employees and what those challenges were that led you to shift to the subcontractor model, because I see a lot of people kind of debating between the two, and there's pros and cons I think to both sides, but I'd love to hear a little bit more about those challenges that you had with having employees on payroll.
Yeah, no doubt. And yeah, definitely to your earlier point, the tenacity, I think, of a young business owner. I mean, we have maybe a little bit more liberty to be able to be a little
Yeah.
bit more tenacious at times because of the lack of other variety of responsibilities that we have. But that's definitely obviously grown as I've had a daughter, and my wife and I have just different lifestyle now in the grand scheme of things. So yeah, as far as subcontractors and employees, that was a tricky one because my business is very seasonal, and being that we were very niche, it meant that the pace by which I could scale with the resources that I had available and the skill set that I had available, all at the same time inhibited by that mindset that we just spoke about that might have been a little bit not the best at times. So having employees, it was unique because I always felt this lingering pressure to keep them busy year round. I mean, I really wanted to provide a secure work environment for them, one that wasn't necessarily super stressful, but also one at the same time they could count on as a reliable source of income. Most of my employees at the time, I did a lot of just networking amongst my community. I mean, many of my peers, honestly, younger guys, and I'd say anywhere from the ages of 16 all the way to 25 or so, like they were viable candidates for who I would talk to. So I'd ask their friend and they would ask their friend, and it created this small community.
Yeah.
And Those times were so, I look at them and I smile because they were really fun times. We had a lot of really, really fun memories of just the kind of crazy grind that we would go through. We just were so under-resourced. It was kind of a joke we would make company wide if like there would be guys, they would be having to dump off a load of dirt off a trailer and they would forget their shovels and they'd be like throwing it out with their hands and they would film it. There was a lot of silly stories we have during that time, but in the grand scheme of things, I had to look at the big picture and recognize that I didn't have a great amount of resources to be able to provide those things that I wanted to those employees. So capital, I did not have capital. I started my business with $30,000 in my bank account, and that dwindled pretty fast. It wasn't. I didn't have this ability to have. I didn't have a great credit, so I didn't have a great line of credit that I could back on. It basically created this element where through many seasons, because again, we're seasonal, winters super slow. It created this environment where I always felt this like anxiety of I'm not going to be able to give the guys work next week and they're going to quit on me. And
Yeah.
sometimes that actually did happen. And I think it was just took a longer hard look in the mirror as well as in a more extreme season where a season in August where I was anticipating us to be able to maintain sales and to maintain the pace of work that we had been having. And it would have been 2021 that it got to this point where things just really kind of went off the rails. I wasn't making any sales. Our project volume decreased dramatically. We had no cash flow, and I had nothing to be able to give to the guys. And so when push came to shove, that was finally my moment of reckoning where I said, okay, yeah, it's time to move on. It's time to consider a different alternative. I mean, and that was at a point where through many ebbs and flows of my business, I've considered just throwing in the towel entirely. But that was still, again, another point where things lined up just somewhat perfectly. And I met a guy who was interested in subcontracting for us. And I started to bid projects according to his costs and adding my markup and just navigated it again. There wasn't any perfect way of going about it, but
Oh,
I went into it again, really blind, and it worked out really nicely. It's definitely changed from what it was. I mean, subcontracting requires really great project management skills, which I personally don't really have. So I had to hire a project manager who's exceptional. She's been amazing. She's pretty much been with us since June of this year, and it's just leveled up the quality of our project delivery so much. But yeah, subcontractors definitely require a tight leash. They require really great systems. They require a lot of clarity, a lot of good communication. But then also in line with the subcontractors that you have to find people that align with your company values. You have
yeah.
to have people that communicate well. For me, like one of the really important things for me is accountability. Like, are they willing to own mistakes when they make them? Are they willing to go and fix things if things need to be fixed? And that would be one of those areas where I point to subcontractors and there's just a different degree of diligence that's required in the same way that it is with employees. And ultimately, the subcontractor model just really aligned with what my business model was and what we were essentially the culture and company we were trying to create for ourselves.
Yeah, man, I can totally appreciate, where you're coming from too. Again, at the beginning of any business, like the number one stress is like, man, like how am I going to keep food on these guys' table? Like how am I going to make payroll? I think that's that is one of the biggest challenges with trying to, start a business with employees, is that, you got to pay them every single week. And even if the money doesn't, the sales aren't coming in, it can be very, very challenging to do that. And very stressful. So that's kind of why, like, I also really like that submodel, or even just at the beginning of any business, like thinking about how to, getting a partner who will also put skin in the game and is willing to work for sweat equity. And, it can be sort of a little bit of a relief to not have to make that, that weekly, payroll. So I, totally understand. I mean, it sounds like the submodel though has been a really great transition for you. Maybe even venture to say that it saved the business is kind of what I'm hearing.
Yeah, that'd be a fair way to put it.
Yeah.
It definitely did. Again, I look at it and I have to be careful talking about it because I've shared with some people that honestly submodel probably isn't great for, and I
Yeah.
think that's why. I mean, I always whenever I communicate it, I want to contextualize it within where my business was at, the type of business that I had, the seasonality elements, all of that sort of thing, but then also the elements of like what resources do you have available? Do you have a business partner? Maybe you have a business partner that's really good at the trade and they can be like the mover and the shaker on the production
Yeah.
side. So for someone like me, who is definitely a sales and marketing, more of a people facing type person, I really like to spend my time on the sales side, and I'm not great at the project management side. So there's never a one size fits all type of approach, but yeah, it's definitely been one that I think for the type of person that really wants to build a business where they can be more sales oriented, they can be more on the marketing, the business development side. It definitely frees up a lot of bandwidth, a lot of headspace, a lot of time,
Yeah.
so that you can move into that direction more so. But again, sometimes if you're a different style of business, employees are really a great way to go.
Yeah, no, I'm really glad that, you brought that up, and that is a great, there isn't, one size fits all here. It's really kind of about, your style, your structure for the business. I think one thing that I learned early in my first software company was like, it's so important to have, somebody who's going to focus on sales and the business, and then somebody who's going to focus on product delivery. Like I've always believed in, having a partner, having, co-founder, somebody, as long as, or it could just be employed, but like, you got to know who is focused on sales. If you don't have somebody focused on sales, it's so easy to, drop the ball, and just like everything else that comes along, like can easily get prioritized over making those calls, over trying to close those deals. And so, that is one of the things that, that I learned, early on. And when I started JobTread, I mean, like, my co-founder at my last company, he was the head of sales. He's like, man, I got it. I will beat this hard. I will make sure that the cash comes in, that we can keep the lights on. You go do everything else. And so I was like, all right, but, in JobTread, like we didn't, I basically had to go wear that sales hat, and I, did all the demos and did the sales. But, my co-founder, who's Casey, was, basically over the product, and he's, he kind of took on all that. It's like, look, I'll get it built. I'll get it delivered. You go do your thing, I'll go do my thing. And so really having that, kind of dividing up the kind of the functional roles there to build the business, but then also deliver the product is so important. And, for some people, yeah, I mean, once you can afford to have employees, 100%, like you definitely need to build out your team. And, I kind of call it the core team of who's going to manage the business is so important. But, it's important that you don't overexert yourself early on and, dig yourself in, into a deep hole of debt, because that can also just compile that stress.
Yeah, that's that place that so many companies can find themselves. And that also plays into the comparison part I mentioned earlier. When you're around a bunch of companies, maybe you've been in business 2 years, you see a bunch of other companies that have been in business 2 to 3 years. And there's this immediate urge to, and this instinct to compare yourself to them and say, okay, well, they're doing this, then I should definitely do this as well. Or they're in this place, why am I not in that place? Why am I not bringing in loads of cash? And I mean, you could always bring it back to the question of like, oh, well, how much profit are they actually making, that type of thing. And of course, that's a huge question, a critical one. But when it all comes down to it, it's like, does your business complement your lifestyle? Does your business, is it scaling appropriately? Is there a part of your business that is just constantly shaking and under stress and causing you anxiety, like whatever it may be? And a lot of times you just don't really see the I'll call them the struggles that other companies are having, because on the face value they look great, but they aren't always as great as they might seem. So yeah, to be able to really navigate that free of this sense of comparison, and again, having mentors is deeply valuable, having peers is deeply valuable, but never finding yourself in a place where just seeing those and using those as the metric by the success or the failure of your business, and how you weigh that is, I think can put a person in a really unhealthy place.
Yeah, 100%, man. I think you always got to look at those around you as, an inspiration, a motivation to try to grow and, learn and just like do better and keep going. It's gotta fuel you, not be a counterweight for you. But, and I think too, like the thing that I've learned about, the life of being an entrepreneur is like, I mean, you're on a roller coaster. You're going to have ups and you're going to have downs. And, those points when, you're just at your lowest, like thinking, man, do I just, throw in the towel? Like, am I done? Like, those are the things that make those highs even better, knowing that, that you were able to work your way out of it and that you made it. It's, I think you got to kind of take both of them and just learn to appreciate that journey, and I think the thing that you said early on too, is that, you already knew that you wanted to go and build a lifestyle business that would give you, the financial freedom, to live with your family, make sure you guys were happy and able to, kind of live that life as a business owner. I think a lot of times people don't always kind of have that forethought about, what is my goal here? What am I doing? I mean, it's, a lot of times it's either kind of a lifestyle business or you're trying to build it and sell it, so the notion of, wanting to build a really great business that you could enjoy, I mean, this is our career, right? Like, you got to love life and enjoy what you're doing. And when you show up every day with that passion, man, like, that's what makes it that much more fun, right?
Yeah, I would agree completely. Yeah, to get caught in this whole I mean, again, I think it's hard because we live in the social media era where people see yachts and they see really rich people and they see all the success and this flashiness. And I mean, again, it's cool, but it's like so ego oriented. It's so materialistic. And it's like, I mean, you can run and chase the next dopamine high if you want to, that's fine. But I mean, when it all comes down to it, I mean, I would hope that the goal of most people beyond, again, if it's a matter of ego for you and you do want to be the person that built this huge, amazing company, awesome. That's super cool. Just be very patient with yourself in that. Recognize, I mean, if you're a young guy like I was and I am, recognize your motivations are going to change. You're going to get married, you're going to have a kid, and that's going to change everything. What you want, what you think you wanted life to look like in the luxurious thought process that you thought it would be, may not necessarily be a life that is actually desirable to you. That's a really complicated lifestyle.
Yeah.
So to have your business, like, really start asking the question of, like, what do I actually want? Like, what would be a life that you would be desirable for me? Like, something that would bring me in whatever you're after. Maybe it is a life that's super easy. Some people don't like lives that are easy because it can be very meaningless. Some people want lives that are challenging, that are always pushing them and motivating them. Other people just want life that's very simple. Like, the more stuff that you accumulate, the larger your business is. Generally speaking, the more liability you have and the more complications that can come along with that, especially if you've accelerated it so far past a point where the foundations became very insecure. So yeah, I love the conversation about outlook on
Yeah.
business, about forethought, and like what really is a business that's going to be meaningful to you. And when you start to think that way and you start to take those visions, turn those into goals, and then deconstruct those goals into much more minute steps along the way, it really changes the way that you approach business as a whole. And I think for most people, they find themselves, that most people that I've connected with that have either started a business, maybe they've failed in a certain business and then they've started again, they often say, like, simplicity and really minimizing extreme ambition and just focusing on more on those minute steps while still having that grand scale vision is a much more meaningful approach to take, rather than just foot on the gas, pedal to the metal the whole way through.
Yeah. So I'm curious, after, you started this before you had your daughter, then you had your daughter. I've got a 5 and a 6-year-old. So I know the struggles. I mean, and I feel like I only know a portion of the real struggle. My wife is the real hero here, but like, how did that change with your family? How did that affect, your work and your business?
So when I had Summer, it took a few months, probably not until she was about, I'd say, 6 months old, or maybe even a little bit older, for me to, I don't know, fully come to grips with what had actually happened.
Yeah.
Especially when we got to the point I mean, she slept relatively well as an infant, but when we got to the point of sleepless nights and all of the stuff that you have when you have a younger baby, it just, as I looked at my business, I did have to ask the question of, like, okay, first, are we going to have more kids? Like, are we going to have to go through this again? And then, I mean, we're talking about a 3-5 years of that lifestyle that I can probably anticipate, maybe more. I mean, who knows?
Well, can I let you know, I didn't get the memo that you could actually get pregnant again right after you've had a baby. So, you definitely got to be careful. And for anyone else out there, yeah, that can happen. Ours are like 14 months apart. So be
Oof.
careful.
Yeah, my brother, this is hilarious. It's super cool and super good. I love it, but it is funny. It's just unique, essentially. My brother is going to have 3 babies under the age of 2.
Oh,
So
wow.
yeah, they dove headfirst into it, which is, I think it's awesome, but at the same
Yeah.
time, yeah, I think there's going to be a lot they're cut out for. So yeah, I totally get that. But yeah, just to be in a place where, okay, what do you want as a business owner? I mean, okay, or what do you want to accomplish? Is it to make a ton of money? Okay, well, what do you want to do with that money? Is it so you can, I don't know, maybe you can be crazy generous and do a lot of philanthropic stuff? Is it so you can accumulate a lot of material stuff? Some people really love the idea of building a legacy. It's like, okay, well, I want to build a legacy for my kids so that way when they're aged out, when they move out of the house, they have a really they don't have to face some of the challenges that I had to face as a young adult. So okay, well then how much money do you need for that? And you have what, 20 years to be able to accomplish that. That's a lot of time to be able to reach certain goals. So first, alleviate pressure off of yourself. And that was one thing that I really had to do is I felt so much pressure to be so much more than what I was at the
Hmm.
time, struggling with a lot of, again, young adult stuff and identity stuff and literally figuring out what I wanted in life. And then second, just being able to take a step back and ask those questions about what you want and to look in the mirror and say, okay, this is the kind of lifestyle that we're going to live. If we're going to live in this area, we're going to have a huge house, or we're going to have a small house. Does it really matter all that much? Are we going to have a lot of stuff? Or we're going to have a little stuff. Does that really matter all that much? Do I want to spend a lot of time with my kid? Well, okay, you can do that now and get by pretty well as a business owner. You don't have to throw 70 hours a week into your business. But again, some people just feel so much pressure to do so. So that would shift gears more so into the conversation of like, okay, if I want a business that complements the lifestyle that I want, what are the values that I'm going to put in place that's going to drive that business forward? And then digging deeper into the more minute steps, like, okay, well then we can talk revenue goals. What are the goals? If I put forward my best foot forward, let's say I had 40 hours a week to dedicate to it, how much can I accomplish within then, realistically? And let's be very realistic with myself. Let's acknowledge the fact that I'm human, and let's acknowledge the fact that we procrastinate sometimes and that we struggle sometimes. And sometimes your baby wakes up 6 times in the middle of the night and you're dead tired and you have zero ability to concentrate or focus throughout the course of the day. Let's take all of that into mind, and then let's start to move forward and create actionable steps based upon that. So yeah, perspective on all of those things was, returning to your original question,
Yeah.
when we had summer, when we hit that 6 month mark, and even still up until now, perspective has been one of the biggest shifts for me of just saying, okay, like, let's be honest with myself. What is the kind of business that I want to run and own? And what do I actually want to get out of it?
Yeah. So, I mean, look, Ben, like you sounds like you got an MBA from, a school of hard knocks here. I mean, like, you're talking about revenue goals and understanding the impact of cash flow and like, running business. Like, I mean, what would you attribute, learning all of this from? Like, how have you, gained the education and the knowledge to be able to run this business and to build it? I mean, like, where did you how'd you figure all this out?
The easy answer is by not having those things in place in the first place. So realizing the consequences of what happens when you don't consider those things and take them into consideration. So yeah, that was my learning lesson. I learned a lot of it from mentors. I mean, the contractor fight was such an amazing resource for such a long period of my business, and those really critical development years of 2, 3, and 4 of basically I would I would think I'm doing pretty well for myself or moving along nicely, but then all of a sudden stuff hits the fan, really start to struggle. I start seeing negative balances in the bank account and I start freaking out. I'm like, okay, what is the problem here? I sold so much this year. Like I sold so much this past month. Why is there not money in the account? And I was like, oh, cash flow. Duh. I need to consider that. So I need a way to track that and analyze that and be able to prepare myself for that. So yeah, there was so much trial by fire through
Yeah.
that realm. Understanding revenue goals, that in itself was a thing of, I just kind of threw out big numbers and thought they sounded nice. To be $1 million company, that sounds great. My ego would be super fluffed by that. But like, okay, well, let's sit back. Do we need that? Is that necessary for where my business is at? Is that literally just a number that has zero definition outside of $1 million that everyone likes to talk about, and it sounds flashy and you can wear a sticker on your shirt that says I'm own $1 million company? Like, yeah, cool. But I mean, why? And again, that's always where I bring this question back to, of if you're building a business and you're doing $500,000 a year and you're able to take home maybe $100,000 for your family, or maybe even $80,000 for your family, and based upon the area you live, maybe you live in Utah and the cost of living is relatively low, and all these sorts of things, like that could be a phenomenal lifestyle for the grand majority of people. And because we're so caught in this idea of big numbers and fluff and ego, we find ourselves stressed out and like disappointed in ourselves because we didn't hit some number that when it all came down to it was just an imaginary number that we looked at other people and said, oh, that looks cool.
Yeah.
So yeah, to be able to dissect it a little bit more thoroughly and to be realistic with those goals, and again, just to have a more honest outlook on things, it just frees up so much anxiety in your life. Like you don't have to hit a certain mark by 5 years. You don't have to hit a certain mark by 10 years. You can plan those things out, and that's awesome if you can, and if you do have a great vision for what those things will accomplish. But you have to do those things first before you just start throwing things at the wall and hoping they stick.
Sure. What do you what are you currently struggling with, or what are your next biggest challenges that you want to overcome for the business?
So one of the big challenges, and I'm speaking to myself here. I still struggle with the ambitious side of things. So I'm really trying to look at 2024, and we plan to have a day with my company where we're all going to sit down, and I have a big value within our company of taking ownership. So I like to have everyone, essentially, even though everyone's not necessarily partners on paper in the business, they all have a element that they get to help be a part of dictating where the company is going to go. So one of the big challenges that I'm having with that is determining, okay, well, based upon what we did in 2023 and where we are going to likely find ourselves falling if we maintain status quo and the pace that we've maintained through 2024, where is that going to put us at the end of the year? And if that's the case, budgeting is something I've never been phenomenal at. So I'm trying to like really take a step back and say, okay, if we want to hire a salesperson, maybe I want to free up a bunch of time for myself so I can spend more time with my family. It's a $60,000 to $100,000 expense I might be adding to my budget. And that means I have to, if I'm at I don't know, 30% gross profit, I'm probably going to have to sell a lot more money in order to be able to make that happen. So there's little conversations about that. I have to constantly take the time and again, just do that honest assessment with myself, try
Yeah.
to let ego get out of the way, allow my team to give their input. But yeah, just being patient with that process is a really big thing. And then when it all comes down to it, there is just a degree of just constantly taking those minute steps, regardless of what the end goal is, making sure that you're always in a place of progressing forward. Those are some of the tricks and challenges
Sure.
that I'm still working on figuring out the best ways to navigate, because we are going to step into a threshold next year where we have a lot of things in place that I've never had in place, like super smooth production. What is that going to do to my ability to sell? I have no idea in the grand scheme of things.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's a hope and a
Well,
prayer, and hopefully some math can help me out there.
I mean, I'd say the thing that, it makes it easier when you've got historical data, so when you can look at, your 2023 numbers, your 2022 numbers, and start really like, I mean, it sounds like you already have a good understanding of your business is cyclical. And so, being able to take that and essentially just kind of, forecast out the next 12 months, you got to take those kind of those bigger months for you, and obviously put some growth on them, and plug them into 2024, and then kind of look at the the months where it wasn't as high for you, but being able to just kind of this is it's all a financial model game, and you got a bunch of assumptions. Understand, there's going to be a lot of assumptions that come into it, but again, having the forethought to sit there and to build a budget, which essentially, again, that's setting forth your goal. Now you've got monthly goals that you need to hit, and to the extent that, and I'm curious, I mean, how are you handling the cyclicality of it? I mean, are there other products or other, services that you can deliver in the, in the slower months, or, do you just sort of scale back and then wait to kind of pick back up, or, how do you manage that cyclicality?
Yeah, so obviously a multifaceted problem there. Yes, definitely. Like we've explored other services that we can offer, especially during the winter time. Like we do sod, so exploring artificial turf has been a really big one for us over the past year and a half now, and just really finding some stability within that line of service. It's kind of its own, especially since we are so niche. To add another service that isn't exactly complementary to sod, there are some elements of that, like you're kind of starting a new business. So we're navigating that carefully,
Yeah.
with a lot of simplicity in mind of how can we do so without derailing the amazing progress we've already made. As I look at preparation for myself, cash flow management is really important. So I keep typically a 13-week outlook on cash flow just based upon what is currently on the books. I can always throw projections into, but I always just like to just completely as things are. What is our 13 outlook on cash flow? Just to make sure that we're mindful of that.
Yeah.
I have resources, like I'm finally in a position with a really great relationship with an awesome bank that I can pull out a line of credit. So that's kind of like a emergency fund if needed. I never want to have to take complete advantage of it. But
Sure.
just it's necessary preparation sometimes to be able to have those things in your back pocket. So yeah, those are a lot of the considerations I take into place. And then as I look forward to 2024, I track all of these KPIs about sales dollars and dollars collected, revenue metrics, things of that nature, job costing. To be able to stay on top of those things is really important because it does give you it just gives you a lot more power over your business, regardless of, obviously there's external things that'll come in that might derail you entirely, external like economic stuff, that things of that nature. But I like to have as much control, everything within my business that I do have influence over and control over. I want to have a really deep tool bag on all of those to make sure I'm just as prepared as I can be.
Yeah. I mean, again, I'm very impressed that, you figured out also kind of putting in place, the systems and processes that can help you streamline the business, that can help make you more efficient, help you keep track of, your job costs. I mean, I can promise you there are not many, 20-something-year-old people who understand the value of job costing and how that's going to help you, continue to grow your business. I mean, it's very impressive that, that you've been able to figure those things out. And, again, it just becomes continually improving and focusing on the numbers and, how can we do better? And, obviously you're going to make mistakes. I mean, everybody does, but, the difference probably between you and a lot of others is that, you'll take the time to reflect and to understand why that mistake happened to make sure that you don't keep making the same mistake over and over. It's crazy when I see, businesses that, they're not tracking their numbers, like they're not doing the job costing, and they're wondering how in the world, can we do all this work and not make any money? And it's like, well, you haven't taken the time to try to track that and to try to understand your numbers. And so, kudos to you to figuring that out. It gets a whole lot easier again when you've got the data that you can kind of fall back on to try to understand what's happening, and that just helps you keep growing and improving.
Yeah, it just provides so much. I mean, again, I mentioned anxiety earlier, and a lot of people feel anxious about simply what they don't know. So know as much as you can.
Yeah.
If it's even if you start in super small, just take some time and identify some core numbers, some core KPIs that are really drivers for your business. And yeah, you'll find a steady increase of your ability to grasp all of that, but also at the same time, it relieves so much anxiety. Even if even if the picture you see is a really ugly picture of your cash flow forecast, at least you got to sell $10,000 by next month or something, whatever the number may
Yeah.
be. Like you at least you're not just sitting there hoping and praying and just
Yeah.
again throwing stuff at the wall and hoping it sticks. I
Yeah.
really avoid that.
So I got to ask, like, I mean, how far out, do you think about things? Like, I mean, is there a 5-year or a 10-year plan that, a grander vision that, you want to see, Peak Sodding go to, and, what is that?
Yeah. Uh, it's not going to be as perfectly defined as I might like it to be. I'd love to get that more fine-tuned. I think in the ultimate scheme of things, it's shifted a little bit this year. So again, in years past, it was always just about top line. That's all that mattered. Now it's become a lot more of what is our company going to accomplish as a result of being a larger company? Am I creating a lot if people are working for me, are they living great lifestyles as a resort? Like is Peak Sodding complementing and even empowering a greater lifestyle for the people that work for me? And that's like kind of I'm sure that sounds really nice on paper, but like to actually take the time to figure out what that truly looks like is a hard thing to do. So is it being able to pay my people more? Is it to have the environment where people like really want to be a part of Peak Sodding? So looking forward in the future, I do want to have a company where people really enjoy the work that they do because they feel like regardless of the size or scale of the company or what percentage ownership they have, they still feel as if they get to take ownership for their role and to be excellent at something. People are so much more capable than they tend to believe that they are. So to be in an environment that really encourages that and provides resources to just do that to the best of their ability, like gosh, I wish I had worked for a company like that in my earlier years. That would have been amazing. So that's a huge vision that I have for the company that I think would be really awesome. The other thing would be just in the service that we offer. we offer a really simple service. I mean, again, on paper, it's sod installation. You can break it down into material lists and quantities and scope of work if you want to, but one of the big things we've incorporated this year has been a core value that we wrote it down. I think there's like a book about it. I've never read the book, but I named it for what it was: uncommon service. And essentially what it is it is an opportunity within our company to provide a service that stretches further and beyond the scope of work that the person hired us to do. So if they hired us to do a sod installation, what are the little things that we could do? And I really encourage my employees to make these decisions. I mean, I can make them sometimes, but it's definitely more because they're typically closer to the client and closer to the project. They're typically going to have a little bit of a greater ability to do this. Like if you had the ability to every single day look at the clients that you're serving and to be able to think of ways that like you could really knock it out of the park for them. Like just do something really cool that would blow them away. It could be like writing them a note. It could be that people sometimes will talk about like bring their trash in or maybe help them carry their groceries into the house. Again, it doesn't matter how small it is. It doesn't matter the object of what the thing it is that you're doing. But to be able to deliver an experience where that person is almost, we've had many people go out of their way to write us reviews and highlight individuals within our company beyond me. Like I've gotten to the point where I'm not mentioned in the reviews anymore. I'm heartbroken. But my people are mentioned, like Iris and Jose and my team, like they're getting highlighted on these reviews that people are writing. And I think it's cool because I know how meaningful it is to them to be able to be like, I'm actually a part of a company where I'm getting acknowledged and mentioned, and it gives
Yeah.
me a sense of value, like in purpose in what I'm doing. So that's sort of, however that's going to be broken down on the scale and what the goal picture of that is, I don't know precisely, but that's definitely the vision of what I have for our company to be able to do and to deliver, no matter the scale of which that ends up, however that manifests itself.
And that's I think it's incredible, man. I really, I love, everything that you're doing here. I mean, you've figured out that, you want to be a niche provider of something. You want to do, one thing really great. You're not trying to be everything to everybody, not trying to take on everything. Like you figured out, like, here's where we're going to go and excel. You've got a passion, for what you do, and your why, what drives you, and that motivates you, and that is without a doubt contagious and affects others around you to want to lead and want to follow you. And I love how you want to empower your entire team to think like an owner and to take ownership over things, and you give them the ability to make decisions and to make an impact on the clients and on the company as a whole. I mean, man, you're so far beyond your age here, wisdom wise, and just understanding like how to build a great company. That's just, dude, I'm so proud to have you part of the JobTread family, and to know you and to call you a friend, because like you're doing everything right. And I know a lot of times you peel back the covers, and sure, it's not all perfect, but really there is no such thing as perfect. There's no perfect path. There's no one size fits all, this is the right answer to every problem. Like you figure it out as you go. But man, when you get the right mindset in there, and like you've got really the true passion and desire to do the best for the company, for your employees, for your customers, I mean, that's how you build a successful business. And the universe just seems to reward those who do things for the right reasons. And it's very apparent that that's what you're doing, Ben. So I'm getting an awesome job, man. It's so great to be able to watch your success, and from such a young age. I hope that everyone out there listening to this can really understand what a great role model and what a great example of how to build a business from nothing, and how to just overcome everything that has been a challenge for you, a roadblock. Like you've been able to overcome it, and you're doing a great job. So I just super excited for you, man. And I appreciate you coming on here and sharing your story and sharing this insight, because this is what others need to hear. Like you can do it. You can be successful. You don't need to have a fancy degree. You don't need to have a bunch of money to start a business. Like you just need to have determination. You need to understand what you're going to do and why you want to do it, and you got to be persistent. Just commit to it, and make it happen. That's pretty much what it boils down to. So again, I want to thank you for coming on here, Ben, and for sharing this, and for being part of the community. And just I know that you help a lot of others out there. So, just, keep doing what you're doing. We look forward to watching your continued growth, and, in, a couple of years, 5 years later, I can't wait to see where you're at and how the business has continued to evolve and transition, but I have no doubt it'll be awesome.
Yeah. And thank you so much. That's super meaningful for you to say. And I appreciate what you guys have done. I mean, JobTread is such a good resource, and I wish more people knew about it. I like blast it from the rooftops, because yeah, JobTread really is such an exceptional service, and it allows me to do my job. And some of the things that I describe, some of the things I might even like somewhat subtly say, just because they become so much easier for me as a result of having something like JobTread. Like that's such a blessing in itself. I would not be able to do so much of what I do if it weren't for having a really, really rock solid system to back it up. Like that is such a foundation for our company. And I would not, and that's not me just fluffing it. Like everyone in my company is like, JobTread's amazing. Like there are other companies that they've been able to compare it to, and it's like, yeah, there's nothing close. So thank you for that. You're awesome.
No, I appreciate it. That, that means just as much, for me as, just, yeah. So thank you. And yeah, I look forward to seeing your continued success, Ben.
Appreciate it, man. Thanks again for having me on. It's been great chatting with you.
Thanks for joining us for this episode of Builder Stories. We hope you enjoyed the conversation and gained valuable insights that can help you in your journey along the way. Don't forget to subscribe to the show and leave us a review. And as always, if you or someone you know has a story to share, please contact us at builderstories.com. We'd love to hear from you. I'm Eric Fortenberry, and remember, every builder has a unique story. Keep building yours.